600 hours, South China Sea. The dawn struggles to break through a suffocating wall of gray fog. Visibility is less than 200 yards. The ocean heaves with a slow, heavy swell, the water the color of slate. On the bridge of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the atmosphere is hushed and routine. The only sounds are the rhythmic thrum of the main diesel engines and the soft whir of ventilation fans. Crew members stand their watches, their faces bathed in the cool green glow of the navigation consoles. A quartermaster pours black coffee into a steel travel mug. The air smells of damp salt and ozone. The radar operator leans forward. His brow furrows as he wipes a smudge from the glass screen. The sweep line passes 12 o'clock. A single contact appears directly ahead. The line sweeps again. The single contact splits into 3. On the third sweep, the screen erupts into a chaotic bloom of green light. A massive cluster of signals materializes from the electronic noise, less than 2 miles off the bow and closing rapidly. The operator shouts the contact report. The calm shatters instantly. The officer of the deck slams his hand onto the general alarm. The electronic klaxon screams through the passageways, a harsh, pulsing wail that wakes every sleeping sailor on the ship. The quartermaster drops his coffee. The mug clatters across the deck plates, spilling dark liquid. Heavy boots thunder against steel ladders as the crew scrambles from their bunks. Doors fly open, sailors zip up coveralls and sprint toward their battle stations. The ship vibrates violently as the engines surge from a low idle to full power. On the bridge, the captain storms out of his sea cabin. He grabs the binoculars hanging from his chair and rushes to the forward windows. He sees only the swirling white mist. The radar screen shows the contacts encircling the vessel like a tightening noose. They are not moving in a standard maritime formation. They are swarming. The captain barks orders to the helm. The helmsman spins the wheel hard to starboard. The 4,000-ton cutter leans heavily into the turn, its hull groaning under the sudden stress. Water churns white at the stern as the propellers bite deep into the sea. The fog begins to tear apart. The first shape emerges from the gloom. It is not a military vessel. It is a fishing trawler, 80 feet long, with a rusted blue hull. It rides high in the water, aggressively fast for its class. Thick rubber tires line its sides, and heavy steel bars reinforce its bow. It does not carry fishing nets. It carries antennas and a high-powered water cannon mounted on the cabin roof. The trawler cuts across the cutter's path, ignoring the international rules of the road. A second boat breaks the fog bank on the port side. Then a third, then 10 more. They are identical, rusted, reinforced, and reckless. They move as a pack, their diesel engines belching black smoke that mixes with the mist. The lead trawler turns sharply, aiming its reinforced prow directly at the cutter's flank. The captain grabs the handset for the external public address system. His voice booms over the water, amplified by the loudspeakers. He orders the approaching vessels to alter course immediately. The trawlers do not respond. They do not slow down. The lead boat accelerates, its bow rising out of the water as it surges forward. The distance closes to 100 yards. The cutter's engines roar as the helmsman tries to back down to avoid a collision. But the swarm is too thick. The trap is sprung. 6 hours, South China Sea. The rising sun burns through the last wisps of fog. The gray curtain lifts completely to reveal the sheer scale of the ambush. The ocean surface is no longer open water. It is a congested, chaotic parking lot of steel and rust. Over 40 fishing vessels surround the Coast Guard cutter. They bob in the swell, their engines idling with a low, collective rumble that vibrates through the hull of the American ship. The smell of unburnt diesel fuel hangs heavy and suffocating in the humid air. On the cutter's bridge, the radio operator scans every maritime frequency. He repeats the hail in English and Chinese. He demands their intentions. The speakers crackle with static. Silence answers him. The fishing fleet offers no communication, only presence. The captain steps out onto the wing of the bridge. He looks down. The nearest trawler is less than 50 yards away. He sees the crew on the deck. They wear blue uniforms, not fishing gear. They do not look at their nets. They look up at him. The standoff breaks. 3 trawlers on the starboard beam rev their engines simultaneously. Black smoke pours from their stacks as they surge forward. They do not aim for the open water. They aim for the cutter's path. The captain shouts a command to the helm. The helmsman spins the wheel hard to port. The large white ship banks steeply, its bow slicing through the waves as it tries to break out of the encirclement. The militia vessels anticipate the move. Two smaller boats on the port side accelerate instantly, cutting a sharp diagonal line across the water. They place themselves directly in front of the turning cutter. The maneuver is suicidal. If the cutter does not stop, it will crush them. The officer of the deck screams the distance. 200 yards, closing! The captain orders the engines to full reverse. The cutter shudders violently as the propeller pitch changes. The water at the stern boils into a white froth. The ship groans under the immense torque, fighting its own momentum. The hull vibrates so hard that dust falls from the overhead vents. The cutter slows, drifting forward, losing speed with every second. The bow of the cutter looms over the small fishing boats. The distance shrinks to 50 yards, then 20. The cutter stops, its momentum finally killed by the reversing engines. The bow stops mere feet from the rusty flank of the lead-blocking vessel. The wake from the sudden stop washes over the fishing boat's deck, soaking the militia crew. They do not flinch. They stand their ground, blocking the way. The whistle bellows 5 short blasts, the international signal for danger. The sound is deafening, echoing across the water. The militia boats ignore it. Instead, the rest of the swarm tightens the ring. They move in closer, effectively boxing the American ship in. There is no room to turn. There is no room to accelerate. The cutter is trapped in a cage of floating steel. On the forecastle, the Coast Guard deck crew scrambles to the rails. They unlock the covers on the heavy machine guns, but they do not load them. The rules of engagement are strict. They watch as the trawlers drift closer. They can see the rust flaking off the hulls. They can see the welded steel plates reinforcing the bows. The lead trawler on the starboard side, the one that initiated the charge, does not stop. It circles back, gaining speed. It aligns its reinforced prow with the cutter's midsection. It is not posturing anymore, it is a battering ram. 6:30 hours, South China Sea. The morning light gleams off the wet steel of the attacking vessel. The ocean remains deceptively flat. On the bridge of the Coast Guard cutter, the silence is heavy and physical. Every officer grips a handrail or a console. Knuckles turn white. The deep rumble of the trawler's engine rises to a mechanical roar as it closes the final gap. The blue hull fills the entire view from the starboard windows. It looks less like a boat and more like a falling wall of iron. The captain grabs the ship-wide comms. His voice is flat and hard. Collision alarm. All hands brace for impact. Starboard side. The warning hangs in the air for a single heartbeat. Then, physics takes over. The trawler slams into the cutter's starboard midsection. The sound is not a thud. It is a shrieking, tearing scream of metal torturing metal. The impact lifts the 4,000-ton cutter, shaking the vessel violently from keel to mast. On the bridge, the shockwave hits instantly. The helmsman is thrown from the wheel, crashing into the bulkhead. The radar operator's chair shears off its bolts, sending him sliding across the polished deck. Maps, pencils, and binoculars rocket through the air like shrapnel. The heavy glass of the starboard window spiderwebs, then explodes inward, showering the deck with razor-sharp shards. Below decks, the noise is worse. In the galley, trays of food and heavy steel pots crash to the floor. In the engine room, tools rattle off workbenches. The hull plating at the impact site does not just dent, it crumples. The reinforced prow of the militia boat acts like a can opener. It tears through the outer steel skin of the Coast Guard ship. Paint flakes off in an exploding gray cloud. Sparks shower down into the water as friction heats the steel to burning temperatures. The trawler does not bounce off. Its engines continue to drive forward, grinding its bow deeper into the cutter's side. The screech of tearing steel continues, a long, agonizing wail. The cutter lists suddenly to port, thrown off balance by the force of the blow. Sailors in the passageways lose their footing, tumbling into walls and down ladders. On the main deck, a bosun's mate grabs a railing to keep from being hurled overboard. He watches as the trawler finally loses momentum. The attacking boat shudders, its engine stalling from the resistance. It drifts back, scraping along the side of the hull. It leaves behind a massive jagged gash in the cutter's gray paint. The steel plate is bent inward, concave and ugly. Inside the Combat Information Center, the emergency lighting flickers on, bathing the room in a dull red wash. The main power grid fluctuates. Screens blink off, then reboot. The collision alarm finally sounds, a rapid, insistent electronic pulse. "Damage report!" the executive officer yells, pulling himself up from the deck. Blood trickles from a cut on his forehead where he hit the console. "Hull breach, frame 45!" a voice shouts back from the headset. "Taking on water in the auxiliary machinery room." The The cutter rolls slowly back to an even keel, but the motion is sluggish. The wound is open. The ocean begins to pour in. 6:35 hours, auxiliary machinery room. The air below decks is hot, humid, and reeks of ozone. Red emergency strobe lights slice through the gloom. The sound of the ocean entering the ship is deafening. It sounds like a jet engine at full throttle. A solid jet of seawater, thick as a man's thigh, blasts through the crumpled steel plating at frame 45. The water strikes the far bulkhead with enough force to strip the paint. The deck grates are already submerged. Black, oily water swirls around the bases of the pumps, rising fast. The watertight door swings open. The damage control team slides down the vertical ladder. They wear heavy fire-retardant coveralls and helmets. They carry thick wooden beams, steel shoring jacks, and rubber patch kits. The team leader shouts orders, but the roar of the water drowns him out. He uses hand signals. He points to the breach. 2 sailors wade into the flood. The water is waist-deep and freezing. The pressure of the incoming jet knocks the first sailor backward. He slips on the oily deck, crashing into a pipe. His shipmate grabs his harness and hauls him up. They push forward again, fighting the current. They jam a heavy rubber mattress over the jagged, tearing hole in the hull. The spray deflects, turning from a solid stream into a violent mist that drenches the compartment. Shoring now! The team passes the heavy timber beams forward. One sailor holds the wood against the patch. Another swings a 12-pound sledgehammer. Crack, crack. The sound of the hammer hitting the wood echoes like gunshots. The beam wedges tight against the frame, bowing slightly under the pressure of the sea outside. The flow of water slows to a manageable trickle. The pumps kick on, vibrating the deck plates as they begin to suck the floodwater out. Topside, the war is different. The attacking trawler remains locked against the cutter's starboard side, held there by friction and aggressive steering. The hulls grind together with a bone-jarring screech. The militia crew crowds the trawler's high bow, looking down on the Coast Guard's main deck. They do not hold rifles, they hold heavy debris. A glass bottle whistles through the air and shatters against the cutter's gray superstructure. Shards of glass spray across the walkway. Then a rusted iron pipe cartwheels over the rail. It slams into the shoulder of a Coast Guard lookout. The sailor crumples to the deck, clutching his arm. "Clear the rail!" the bosun screams. He rushes forward, grabbing the injured sailor by the vest. He drags him behind the cover of a steel winch. More objects rain down. Heavy steel bolts, wrenches, cans of food, jagged scrap metal. The militia crew hurls them with violent precision. They scream and gesture, their faces twisted with exertion. A heavy wrench clatters off the capstan, missing the bosun's head by inches. The Coast Guard crew retreats into the skin of the ship, slamming the watertight doors behind them. The deck belongs to the mob. 4 hours, bridge of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter. The situation board is a clutter of red markers. The radar screen is useless, a solid blob of interference caused by the proximity of 40 steel hulls. Outside the smashed starboard window, the wall of fishing boats has become a physical barrier. They grind against each other, their tires squealing, pushing inward to crush the cutter. The gap between the ships is gone. The cutter is pinned. The captain stands amidst the broken glass on the bridge deck. He looks at the feeds from the external cameras. The militia crews are preparing grappling hooks. They are escalating from harassment to boarding. He turns to the tactical action officer. His voice cuts through the alarms. He authorizes non-lethal countermeasures. "Clear the decks," the captain orders. "Engage acoustic device. Charge water cannons." On the port bridge wing, a heavy gray dish mounted on a swivel gear rotates. It looks like a spotlight, but it emits no light. It is a long-range acoustic device. The gunner aligns the sights on the nearest cluster of trawlers. He flips the safety cover and presses the trigger. The air ripples. A tight, focused beam of sound blasts from the dish. It is not a noise. It is a physical hammer blow to the eardrums. The frequency is designed to induce nausea and disorientation instantly. On the deck of the lead trawler, the effect is immediate. The militia members drop their metal pipes. They clutch their heads with both hands, screaming silently against the wall of sound. 2 men collapse to their knees, vomiting violently onto the rusted deck. The helmsman inside the trawler's cabin loses control, slumping over the wheel as the sonic wave penetrates the thin glass. The trawler veers sharply to the left, banging into its neighbor. "Water cannons active!" The shout comes from the console. 2 high-pressure nozzles mounted on the cutter's superstructure spin to life. The pumps scream as they force thousands of gallons of seawater through the barrels. A solid white jet of water erupts from the nozzle, hitting the attacking fleet with the force of a freight train. The stream hits the wheelhouse of the second trawler. The glass windows shatter instantly, spraying the interior with shards and high-velocity water. The electronics short out in a shower of sparks. The stream sweeps across the deck. A militia member trying to throw a grappling hook is caught in the blast. The water lifts him off his feet and hurls him backward. He smashes into a winch and slides down the deck limp. The gunner traverses the water cannon. The jet sweeps the rail like a scythe. It knocks heavy steel debris off the militia boats and into the sea. It strips the canvas covers off their equipment. It pushes the smaller boats backward, fighting their engines with pure hydraulic force. But the swarm is deep. For every boat the water cannon repels, two more push from behind. The vessels in the rear ram the vessels in the front, forcing them back into the kill zone. The militia captains below decks, protected from the sound and spray, throttle their engines up. Black smoke pours from 40 exhaust stacks, choking the air. The swarm does not break. It compresses. The crushing pressure on the cutter's hull increases, popping rivets and groaning under the strain. 700 hours. Flight deck of the Coast Guard cutter. The focus of the battle remains fixed on the forward and beam sections. The roar of the water cannons and the screech of the acoustic device dominate the soundscape. The stern of the ship sits relatively quiet, bobbing in the disturbed wake. The helicopter tie-down chains rattle against the non-skid deck. A lone lookout stands near the hangar bay, watching the swarm through the rear safety netting. He spots movement in the diesel smoke. A massive shape detaches itself from the rear of the militia formation. It is not a standard fishing boat. It is a 200-ton supply trawler, its hull reinforced with concrete-filled steel tires. It rides high and heavy. It does not turn to broadside. It lines up directly with the cutter's fantail. The engine pitch screams as the trawler accelerates. The bow rises, aiming not for the hull, but for the flight deck itself. The lookout mashes the talk button on his radio. He screams the warning, "Stern impact! Brace! Brace!" He dives behind a steel equipment locker. The trawler strikes the cutter from the rear. The collision is catastrophic. The high, flared bow of the fishing vessel mounts the cutter's low fantail like a beast mounting prey. The steel safety nets designed to catch falling sailors snap instantly under the tonnage. The metal posts shear off at the deck level, spinning into the air like missiles. The trawler continues its momentum, sliding 10 feet onto the flight deck. The sound is a sickening grind of heavy iron crushing aluminum and composite. The landing grid, the heavy steel mesh used to secure helicopters, buckles and tears up from the deck plates. Under the flight deck, a high-pressure hydraulic line ruptures. This line powers the helicopter haul-down system. The pipe bursts. Red hydraulic fluid sprays across the white bulkhead and the gray deck. It coats the crashing trawler in a slick, crimson film. The fluid hits the hot exhaust stack of the invading vessel. White steam hisses violently as the liquid boils on contact. The cutter pitches forward violently, the bow dipping deep into the sea as the weight of the trawler pushes the stern down. On the bridge, officers grab consoles to stay upright. The ship lurches like a seesaw. The trawler stops, its bow wedged firmly onto the flight deck, trapped in the twisted wreckage of the safety rails. It hangs there, a parasite attached to the host. The militia crew on the trawler's bow rushes forward. They are now physically aboard the Coast Guard ship. They carry gasoline bombs and glass bottles. They light the rags. 7:30 hours midships deck starboard side. The black smoke from the fantail fire drifts forward, stinging the eyes. The cutter sits low and heavy in the water, its buoyancy compromised by the flooding below. The distance between the main deck rail and the ocean surface has shrunk to less than 8 feet. The attacking swarm senses the vulnerability. The smaller militia boats kill their engines and drift flush against the cutter's hull. They bump and scrape along the steel skin like parasites. The air fills with a metallic clatter. Dozens of grappling hooks fly over the Coast Guard railing. The iron claws screech across the deck plates before catching on cleats, stanchions, and scuppers. Ropes pull taut instantly. Bamboo and aluminum ladders slam against the side of the ship, their tops hooking over the gunwale. "Repel boarders! Midships!" The command screams over the tactical radio. The watertight doors swing open. The maritime safety and security team surges onto the open deck. They are armored in heavy Kevlar vests and ballistic helmets with face shields. They do not carry rifles, they carry orange-stocked shotguns and heavy riot batons. The first militia member crests the rail. He wears a blue jumpsuit and a construction helmet. He swings a crowbar at the nearest guardsman. The guardsman steps inside the swing. He drives the butt of his shotgun into the boarder's solar plexus. The air leaves the attacker's lungs in a harsh grunt. The guardsman pumps the shotgun. Clack, clack. He fires point blank. The beanbag round slams into the boarder's chest with the force of a fastball. The man flies backward, toppling over the rail and splashing into the narrow gap between the ships. More heads pop up along the rail. A chaotic melee erupts. A tactical officer raises a compressed air launcher. He fires rapid bursts. Thump, thump, thump. Pepperball rounds explode against the militia boat's wheelhouse and the climbing men. Clouds of orange chemical dust burst into the air. The boarders choke, coughing violently, their eyes streaming. They lose their grip on the ladders, sliding down into the waiting mass of boats below. On the rail, it is hand-to-hand. A militia sailor grabs the barrel of a Coast Guard shotgun, trying to wrench it free. The American sailor twists the weapon, breaking the grip, and swings the heavy steel receiver into the attacker's jaw. Bone cracks. The attacker falls. "Cut the lines!" the team leader yells. Deck crew rush forward with hatchets and combat knives. They hack at the taut ropes. The fibers snap under the blades. Ladders fall away, splashing into the sea. The militia boats drift slightly apart, their connections severed. The deck is slick with pepper dust, seawater, and sweat. The tactical team stands panting behind the cover of the superstructure, watching the rail. The first wave is broken. 800 hours main engine room. The heat in the lower decks is suffocating. It hovers near 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is thick with the stench of burning rubber and overheated oil. Sweat soaks the uniforms of the engineering watch. They move frantically between the monitoring consoles and the physical machinery. The vibration of the ship changes. It is not the steady thrum of propulsion. It is a ragged, coughing shudder. The chief engineer stares at the central gauge cluster. The needle on the starboard intake pressure drops to 0. The vacuum alarm screams. "Debris in the sea chest," he shouts. Strainers are clogged. The massive diesel engine gasps for air it cannot get. The militia's trash, heavy plastic tarps, discarded nets, and floating debris has been sucked into the raw water intakes. The cooling system fails instantly. The cylinder temperatures spike into the red zone within seconds. The automated safety system triggers. A series of heavy metallic clunks echo through the hull as the fuel cutoff valves slam shut. The roar of the main engines dies. The sudden silence is shocking. The only sound remaining is the high-pitched whine of the emergency generator and the sloshing of bilge water. Topside, the effect is immediate. The white foam at the stern vanishes. The cutter loses its forward momentum. It slows, drifting aimlessly in the heavy swell. The bow falls off the wind. The ship wallows, rolling uncomfortably in the waves without power to stabilize it. The militia fleet senses the kill. The chaotic swarming stops. The trawlers pull back, creating a perimeter of 200 yards. They idle there, watching the crippled American ship. The blue smoke from their exhausts thickens as they rev their engines in neutral. They are communicating, they are organizing. A large steel-hulled trawler, the heaviest of the pack, moves to the center of the formation. It aligns its bow with the cutter's exposed midsection. It is the executioner. On the bridge, the captain grips the useless helm. He looks at the radar screen. It is powered by the emergency bus, flickering weakly. He sees the formation changing. The surrounding blips merge into an attack wedge. "Main control report," he barks into the sound-powered phone. "Casualty on both mains," the voice crackles back. "We are dead in the water, Captain. Restart is negative." The captain looks out the window. The lead trawler drops into gear. Its propeller churns the water. It begins its run. The rest of the pack follows. A slow-moving avalanche of steel accelerating toward the stationary target. The cutter sits helpless, a sitting duck in the open ocean. 815 hours, South China Sea. The ocean is unnervingly quiet around the drifting cutter. The only sound is the mechanical roar of the attacking trawler's engine as it charges. The heavy steel bow cuts a white wake in the water, aimed directly at the Coast Guard ship's wounded midsection. On the bridge, the crew braces against the bulkheads. They grab onto fixed objects. They prepare for the steel to buckle one last time. The distance closes to 200 yards. The trawler does not deviate. It commits fully to the collision. Then the sky tears open. It starts as a low vibration in the chest, then erupts into a thunderclap that splits the air. 2 U.S. Navy fighter jets drop out of the clouds at nearly the speed of sound. They scream over the water at an altitude of 500 feet. The noise is absolute. It is a physical wall of pressure that slams into the fleet. The sonic shockwave hits the surface. The water sprays up in a fine mist. On the attacking trawler, the glass windows of the wheelhouse explode outward from the pressure change. The militia captain flinches, baring his head and jerking the wheel instinctively. The trawler swerves violently to the left. It misses the cutter's hull by yards, its wake rocking the American ship. The jets bank hard, their afterburners glowing orange against the blue sky. The sound of their engines drowns out the diesels. They circle back, lining up for a second pass, their weapon hardpoints clearly visible to the militia crews. The resolve of the swarm breaks instantly. The formation dissolves. The trawlers turn away, their bows pointing toward the horizon. They scatter like insects under a light, fleeing at maximum speed back toward the mainland. The executioner trawler struggles to turn, its engine smoking, retreating into the distance. On the cutter, the silence returns, broken only by the distant roar of the jets patrolling overhead to ensure the retreat. The captain exhales slowly. He picks up the handset. "Damage control, get those engines online," he orders. "We are leaving."